Thank you, Melissa. So I have the pleasure to be with our seated guests who are also Zeta clients on our day 2 of this symposium. So a great honor. A lot of references today in terms of what 1 and 1 equal, and you guys definitely make it 4, because without our clients, definitely we wouldn't be addressing the big challenges ahead of us in terms of marketers and technologies. So today we're going to talk about your specific uses of technology to achieve your goals next year. I want to just start in terms of what's ahead of us right now in terms of fourth quarter. So, from a travel perspective and retail perspective, you're both coming out with post-pandemic resurgence, but it's a very different season. So let's talk about first, Michele, with you, in terms of, we're seeing retail, the season is already upon us. It's much earlier than ever, and Americans are expected to spend more than ever this season, back to 10% year over year from last year, but we're back to the characteristics of a 2019 model. And specifically, I know that for your company that doesn't have an e-com model, there is a little bit more uptick in brick and mortar. Possibly that's because of inventory scarcity and the ability to kind of connect campaigns and attribution and stock. But I'd like to hear a little bit more about how you're planning to use technology in terms of this quarter, and then a little bit in terms of what's ahead.
Great. So this has been such an interesting year and an interesting season for us. We have definitely seen huge shifts in how the customer is looking at holidays and seasons. Their excitement level and their desire to have something to look forward to, whether that was celebrating Halloween and going huge and big. You saw massive displays in people's yards and their homes, and we're seeing the same thing repeat for Christmas. And to your point, inventory is key. And while a lot of people have struggled with supply chain, et cetera, if you have it on the shelves, the customer is there for it. And we definitely saw the customer as well moving significantly earlier in terms of when they were shopping. And so, a lot of that is coming true in the data. You see it in terms of what the customer is searching for, what they're on our sites looking for, what they're responding to in email. All of those things showed us that the customer was ready and willing to shop significantly earlier. And so, you make adjustments as you see that and try to make sure that we're meeting the needs of that customer as we go through this season. And so, again, the ability to respond and seeing that in the data is incredibly important to our business.
Wonderful, and I want to make sure that we both give travel a spotlight as well. We're not back to the 2019 characteristics yet, but since last year, obviously, there is some green shoots in terms of activity, seeing a 60% growth, obviously from kind of where we left during the pandemic. But that's still putting pressure, in terms of where we're seeing booking levels, right? So, at a marketer, you're really fighting of where can I get the best bookings, the best revenue per unit in terms of each room. So I'm really just wondering, how are you going about balancing COVID concerns with the pressure of kind of this, other people have mentioned this YOLO economy. Well, this welcoming of, this is the year that you only live once kind of mindset of how you approach this next season. So where are you seeing that come into fruition at MGM, Thomas?
Sure. So a few different places, right? In terms of that YOLO economy that you're referring to, yeah. I think what we have seen as consumers have come out of the really strict restrictions and lockdowns is that people want to find ways to experience Vegas in a new way and sort of really re-engage with people face-to-face and live life again, right? And so we've actually seen explosions in bookings, frankly, over the course of 2021. And we're going to see that trend continue into 2022. So I think the big thing for MGM Resorts is how do we best position ourselves on the current marketplace to capitalize on the shift in consumer dynamic and how people are viewing experiences in conjunction with products, frankly. So one thing that we've done for example, is with Black Friday, we actually moved up our sales. So we launched it yesterday, which is very different from what we normally do. We normally launch it on Black Friday itself, but this allows us to better position ourselves and say, look, you can buy an experience, you can buy a product. It's something where, what are you going to get more value out of? And so it's really that positioning of the value and entertainment of what MGM Resorts can add to your life versus what another product can potentially do for you.
Fabulous. Stephen, what are the dynamics that you're facing right now as we head into fourth quarter?
Sure. So let me start by saying, sorry, I've been freezing on Zoom for 2 years now, so I wanted to freeze in public and see what it was like. It's pretty cool. So, Motel 6, G6 Hospitality operates the Motel 6 and Studio 6 brands. A little bit different from MGM, a little bit different customer base. 2/3 of our customers walk into our property every night and say, do you have a room? Because they're on the road, they're driving from destination to destination. So we, fortunately, a little bit more favorable treatment in terms of COVID in the hospitality industry at Motel 6. That was a better place to be. The budget brands do better in times like COVID, which was very helpful. But one of our biggest challenges are understanding who's driving to us. Why are they driving? What's the purpose of their trip? Where are they going to stop? So things like Waze, navigation, gas station video, and kind of figuring out that piece of why they're on the road and where they're going is really critical to moving forward. We're actually having a better 2021 than we had in 2019. We've been very fortunate in that regard. Revenues are up, over that comparable year. So we're in good shape, and we're looking forward to working with Zeta to drive more customer intelligence on how to capture that 2/3 of our business that drives from location to location without booking ahead of time.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting that you bring up mobile and kind of the window in which that we have to remain fluid as we predict customers' intent to come into store, intent to have the grand trip to Las Vegas, or a safe bed to sleep in the moment when they're getting drowsy on the road. And so let's talk about how identity plays into that prediction. How are you right now using ID-based activation in your marketing planning? Specifically, how are you using your first-party data to kind of influence your go-forward performance? Who'd like to start? Thomas?
Sure.
Okay.
So I would break it out into two parts. One, we work with partners like Zeta who have really deep and rich access based off of their ID, and it gives us a different way of targeting users and creating new opportunities to find people. On the flip side, from a measurement standpoint, what we're looking at is positioning ourselves well into 2023 and seeing how we can better leverage our CDP to create distinct segments and then create that into marketable opportunities. So that's something that we're working through right now, and something where we're looking to layer in additional value into how we actually look at our consumer. So by that I mean we're doing a lot of tests around match market models. We're looking at incrementality, and then we're going to say, okay, let's leverage all of this data, all of this intelligence, apply that to our attribution models, and make sure that they're as smart as they can be when we go into 2023 and that new world, right? I think sort of agility, flexibility is going to be really key. Mm-hmm. And so the more data you can have to sort of inform your insights and be flexible no matter which direction we have to go in based off of GDPR, CCPA, and any other restrictions that come into place is going to be really key.
Yeah. Now, Stephen, I know that you're just starting to tap into some of the ID benefits that Zeta has to offer. How is that informing how you're going to go forward in 2022?
Yeah, a couple thoughts. So we are very much, as you pointed out, in the process of segmenting our customer base. We moved to Zeta about a year ago. We've got a lot of work to do to move forward in terms of understanding our customer segments and types, who's traveling when and why. A lot of those are going to be leisure trips, and so that's a distinct segment of customers. It's interesting, it's a cross-section of customers across the U.S. economy. So we have truck drivers, we've got traveling medical crews and technicians, we've got emergency responders, particularly in COVID, the teams that kept the lights on in the economy. Yeah. Then we have a leisure component to our business, particularly in the drive season, that like the idea of driving from location to location. In COVID, like the fact there was an outside door to the room, you didn't have to go through a lobby. That was critical for a lot of our customers. So understanding that was important. And then one of the key things that we did very early in our days with Zeta was to realize that there was not really an informational place or a site where first responders could go to see who was open. Mm-hmm. Not all, in fact, many hotels were closed in that early time frame. Mm-hmm. So we set up a site to enable properties to customers to understand where they could stay, who had to travel, had to be on the road, had to meet necessary business. So that was an interesting observation. And moving forward, we're going to focus on segmentation and we're going to focus on quality. So the intersection is a lot of our customers, we acquire a new customer, and then if we send them to a property that has some quality issues, the lifetime value of that customer is pretty dramatically lower than if we sent the customer to a property that's in great shape. So we'll be focused on ensuring that we match the right customer with the right property type in order to drive LTV for that segment.
Would you like to comment too?
We're actually in the infancy of this process. We have segmentation that we've done with our prior providers and prior CDI solution, but we're just making that jump to Zeta. And so for us in 2022,
welcome.
Huge initiatives for us and huge goals around it, but nothing we've activated yet. So, sitting here listening to all this are all the things that we're so excited to be getting into as we move forward.
Thank you. We're happy to have you as a new CDB client. So, one of, at the beginning of the keynote, kicked it off with David Steinberg and Sir Martin Sorrell. One of the big themes that you've even touched on right now, Thomas, is about agility, right? And so really, how are you kind of reinventing how you keep customers engaged, or how you're looking to really focus on solid data foundation, key line of sight to where you're winning in terms of your tests or where failures need to be canceled? Where are you looking for the Zeta marketing platform to help you with that? I'll pick on you since you're our newest client and what we can deliver.
So I think that the comment about agility is it's so important right now. And I think it's one of the lessons coming out of the pandemic that is so important for us to keep. Moving at the speed of the customer has always been important in retail, but now they're moving even faster. There's been so much change that we've needed to adjust to, and we need to keep that always in the back of our mind how important that is. We as a retailer shut down stores, so how do you keep the customer engaged while your stores are closed? How do you make sure you're not losing that customer to somebody else? You open your stores back up, how do you communicate a message to them when you're doing that? And the teams just did so much change and agility to get to the end result of making sure we re-engage that customer. We saw a huge upsurge in demand when we reopened. Okay, how do you optimize that? How do you make sure you continue that flow? And so agility has been a huge piece of it, and ability in the future to really feed data into that to make sure that we're meeting the needs is going to be a big piece of what we do and what we're planning to do.
Right, and it's not just in terms of agility of how you react to customers' expectations, but how do you get ahead of it, right? How do you
absolutely
foresee, a spike in foot traffic, foresee a specific holiday item, needing to be restocked, or a post-purchase program to kind of nurture that individual? Very important. Now, so Stephen, you'd mentioned setting up a site kind of in context to emergency responders. I'd like to hear, that sounds in itself a very hard feat. How did you work internally to kind of use data to foster maybe internal agility amongst different silos within the organization?
Yeah, I'll tell you. Let me pivot, if I may, from the past to looking forward.
Yeah, let's do that.
So we have a great relationship with Digital Marketing Works, our agency, and Zeta, working together to really engage our customers. We have a clear focus on our My6 program. So My6 is a frequency program, a recognition program for our guests. Loyalty programs are expensive. The traditional brand programs that involve points and point distribution impose an expense on the property that you're staying at. So if you're one of the big chains, that stay is costing that property $5 to $8 a night as an example in many cases. And that's too much money for our franchisees who are very much a budget opportunity at Motel 6. So our program is about a discount, which is available at all properties everywhere at all times. It's also about ease of booking. And then it's about frictionless experience on the mobile app, increasingly better experience on the mobile app. So one of the things we'll be working with Zeta and Digital Marketing Works is how to better reach that loyalty group, that frequency group of customers. How do we bring them on board in greater numbers? And then how do we communicate with them differently through various methods, including email, including SMS texting, including the app, to really extract the maximum value, make their lives easier, make the booking experience easier for them, but also drive more revenue for G6 Hospitality.
Thomas, now to pivot to MGM, how are you with this kind of resurgence of pent-up travel, wanderlust, and actual, ability to book? Where are you seeing data or agility in how you use data to, create a signal rather than just add more noise?
Definitely. So a couple of things. One, we've actually seen a lot of the same trends that you have at G6, right? In terms of consumers want more digital touch points, they want ease of experience. And so we've seen a lot of people say, okay, we've taken that data and we're using it to say mobile check-in, mobile key pass, et cetera. So you can enable your experiences in person through the digital world, right? And sort of bridging that gap has been really key for us in terms of improving the consumer experience and making sure that we're listening to those trends and insights. Something that we've also learned from a pure marketing standpoint is we've been trying to push more midweek bookings, right? So
Midweek.
yes. So Vegas is very much driven in large part by conventions, frankly. And so as those have been in a bit of a limbo period for 2021, right? We've been looking at using the leisure market to help fill the gap for midweek bookings. And so one thing that as we've pushed forward with that initiative, particularly with Zeta, we have found that there's been a lot more booking shifting towards Aria, which traditionally is a property that we've seen, funnily enough, have a lot of business travelers. And so we're seeing a lot of overlap, right, between the type of people who want to book midweek and previous behavior patterns in terms of convention bookings and familiarity with brands, right? And so as we move into next year, it's how do we take a look at that insight and develop creative that really speaks to that consumer mindset of even if you're not traveling for business, but you're primed to travel midweek because it's what you're used to, you understand the benefits of it, how do we position that to that audience in a way that makes sense and capitalize on that booking and that behavior?
Thomas, when we talked about this earlier, it was an interesting observation to say, how do I use this time and be, agile to say there's no business travelers coming, there's no conferences, what do I do next? And so it's this notion of test and learn and ability to use gaps or, perhaps slowdowns to fuel future growth is definitely, a great opportunity that I'm inspired by that story. Michele, you had a significant period of time where stores were closed. So how did you take that kind of opportunity, if you will, to reboot, be more agile, and kind of get out of the gates, for this holiday season in 22 differently?
Yeah, when we closed down, and it's one of those things that's interesting from a retail perspective. We could have chosen to stay open. We could have been deemed essential. But not knowing what to do from a safety perspective for our associates and our customers, we decided to take the dramatic step and close down stores. And of course you say, okay, well, how do I keep that customer engaged? And so, we went back to the teams and basically you want to cut expense because you don't have revenue coming in, but you still need to communicate. And so going back out and saying, okay, what can we do to engage these customers? What content can we provide to them that's going to excite them about us being open again in the future, but still keep them around for today, still keep them engaged. And so that's one of the biggest things we did. We reinvented and rethought the content that we're delivering to the customer, and we've maintained that. We've actually taken a much more inspirational approach to our content ever since that time period, and watched as the customer has really engaged in it across different channels, and we're seeing how we're giving them an opportunity to see our product in a slightly different way that increases average transaction size. There's just a lot that can be done across that continues from that point of view. And then it's also taught us how to move quickly. Okay, so we were able to do what used to take us 2 weeks to do in 2 days. Okay, so now when we see a signal from the customer, how can we flip that even quicker? How do we keep moving and keep that sense of urgency without killing anybody, but keep that that pace going and making sure, because the customer in retail is telling us every day what they think. They'll let us know whether or not it's working or not working, and so it's just such a good indicator for us to follow as we look at all of these trends that are changing because of the pandemic. And really saying, what is going to change back? You saw such a dramatic acceleration to e-commerce and the acceptance of BOPUS, the acceptance of same-day delivery. Do those numbers stay the same or do they shift back down a little bit? The customer home became so important. Outdoor spaces became important. Nostalgia, tradition. So how much of that does that stay and does it change? And how quickly is it going to change so that we're able to adjust and adapt throughout it? So we've taken those lessons and continue to try to apply them day in and day out.
I was pleasantly surprised when I saw that non-e-commerce brick and mortar was back in higher levels than 2019, partly because of inventory, partly because of I want it now, but definitely I'm excited to see that number. And by all means, I participated in Christmas in July. I definitely did. It was a fun tradition, and I'm looking forward to future traditions as we come in. One other bit that Sir Martin Sorrell mentioned is we're at a growth premium, but the expectation of profitability and bottom line revenue is obviously important. So Stephen, you had referenced the incentives and ensuring that you were matching a traveler to the right property at the right offer, right time. Can you talk about kind of how you specifically want to balance profitability in 2022?
Sure. So in the travel industry in general is very COVID dependent. Retail feels a bit more even, and we are really highly dependent to and sort of sensitive to growing or shrinking COVID numbers. So in June, we saw a resurgence in travel. People were obviously cooped up for 18 months, huge explosion of demand. Not enough labor, frankly, but huge explosion of demand, and we were in a strong period the first part of summer. That eased off a bit as school picked up and kids went back to school and COVID was on the increase again. Now that those numbers are coming down, we're seeing strong pickup in demand in the fourth quarter. 2021 will be a good year. Moving forward, look, in 2020, last year, we halted all top-level marketing, all awareness marketing. Tom Bodett went away for a while. Digital marketing stayed on. We layered back on the top-line marketing, awareness marketing, this year. And I think, in terms of agility, we're better off now working with Zeta to balance those components. We'll dial them up and dial them down as needed to generate more top-line awareness in what we feel is a better period. We're prepared to cut back if we feel that there's going to be an issue or a rise at some sort of spike again. Mm-hmm. So I think the whole outcome of the whole exercise, we're in a better position to balance those variables and turn those knobs as needed, which is helpful.
And labor is a variable too, not just in terms of specific market dynamics, but specific market dynamics in terms of where the labor force is too to keep the properties up.
It's been a huge problem, and we're demand. There's some relief on the demand side, fortunately for us now. The labor issues really haven't cleared up yet. We continue to have some difficulties in that area.
Yeah. Thomas, does profitability matter in Las Vegas, or is it all in?
Yes, for a long story short, it definitely does matter. I think it's also interesting to see, right, in being a travel brand post-COVID, I think there's some unprecedented things. You saw Las Vegas shut down. Mm-hmm. Our regional properties shut down. It was a very interesting situation to be in, and what we have found is we have to be really sensitive not only to what the new mandates are, whether it's in Mississippi or Nevada, but also really sensitive to what our customers are saying they want to do and being able to provide those experiences within those confines, right? So if your consumer base in Mississippi is telling you something different, those properties need to react in that way versus what we do in Las Vegas, which we have a few different properties on the Strip, and so we react as sort of more of a unit, and we can be able to free flow between different properties, right? Or we understand that you might be looking for this type of experience, and we can showcase something else in it for a different property. Whereas in some of regional markets, we don't have that same flexibility. We might just have one property in one city, and we just need to work within that confine, right? So that's where it's been really interesting to see as we balance out the needs from a health standpoint with profitability standards. How do we shift priority between different properties and different markets to maximize effect?
Okay. And in terms of profitability, Michele, you've got a unique accounting book this year, right? Should we say that, you've you have a separate entity now from Bed Bath & Beyond. So how does that kind of view your flexibility in terms of 2022 planning or, kind of your revenue commitments?
Yeah, it was an interesting year of transition for us, moving from being a part of a much larger company to being a smaller independent company, one that was more entrepreneurial in spirit. We were focused on we're an 80-store regional chain. We're no longer part of a 1,000-store kind of entity. It changes. The resources you have at your disposal are different, but at the same time, again, we're going to go back to that word agility over and over again. But that ability to move quickly and really react when you're seeing something work or not work. You can cut spend that way. So anything the data can tell us around effectiveness and we quickly react and respond to it has been huge for us in this past year. We've shifted out of a lot of long lead time marketing channels around anything that's going to take a longer time for us that we don't have the flexibility to make changes around. And so, as an independent company, I'd just say it allows us to move much faster. It's a core team. There's not a lot of complexity. The data's all our data. We can get in there. We can look at it, hopefully soon. And, it just gives us the ability to move much quicker and focus much more on the profitability.
Okay. So that kind of rounds out our questions that we prepared. We've got a couple extra minutes. I do thank you for talking about, the hindsights and insights from, rear view is always so clear. But when, a couple parting words, since we have a couple more minutes, just to talk about, kind of where you predict Zeta adding value in terms of your go forward use of technology. Anyone can start.
Go ahead.
Well, I've got a couple examples. So really, as we heard earlier, we're very much crawling into the space and uncovering opportunities. Look forward to diving into additional segmentation tools. We had a random conversation with the team at Zeta even a couple weeks ago. We're evaluating a new large piece of business as a potential source of demand, and we need to understand, is that truly incremental or not? Or those customers coming through other channels? And so without Zeta, we wouldn't have been able to tell, is this volume really uniquely different for our hotels? Because one of our jobs in distribution, e-commerce distribution, is to discover new revenue streams that are not already present in one shape or another on the platform. So the cool part is Zeta can help us identify, yes, these customers truly are incremental. We don't see these anywhere else in your ecosystem. This is a new source of revenue, which was hugely powerful. And we actually structured the relationship with this potential new source so that we had the option to say, we want more of it or we want less of it after a measurement period. So that was a great example, I think it was, and kudos to the Zeta team for helping us solve that issue.
Giving you the option to step in.
Yeah.
Yep.
I can go next. I would say that, go in order.
Okay.
But I would say that as we go into next year, right, we definitely want to position ourselves more aggressively in the market. Right. We want to ensure that, I guess, not taking advantage of the situation, but understanding where we have been, it's a moment to reset, right? And say, okay, how can we position ourselves moving forward? There was a break that we took from our customer base because they physically couldn't come to our properties. So how do we retell our story, and who do we tell it to? And so with Zeta, that's been really interesting to see as we dig into the insights on who's actually engaging and who's engaging with which property. How do we then take those and then gather those into segments on our end and say, okay, as we move forward into next year, what should we test and prioritize? And where do we think we're going to find additional incremental value? To your point on what you guys are doing with new audiences, right? Net new is always going to be really important regardless of the vertical you're in. What is that next trip that we can get you to take if you're a customer from Los Angeles? Or what is a trip that we can get you to take that you've never been on before if you're from New York? And so getting a sense of how we can prioritize that, what signals we can leverage, and what creative messaging points are really going to speak to your needs is going to be really key to figuring that out. And that's where we've been able to partner with Zeta well to determine and kind of figure out what those insights should be moving forward.
Thomas, this is the first time I've heard about, the the authenticity of matching this incremental audience to a message. You know, today's theme is about creativity, and definitely hope that Zeta provides not just the who in terms of the incrementality, but your ability to really take each of your property's value props and kind of tailor it to that unique Vegas experience or somewhere else.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that my big thing, right, is you let the tech do what it's designed to do, right? Zeta is very good at finding our audiences, and we say, hey, this is our goal. These are the constraints, for the campaign, and they do an excellent job of finding that user. So on our side, right, we need to do a better job and continue to build and iterate and create new opportunities for our partners to find new people and continue to grow the audience base.
Perfect. And Michele, we've got a lot of promises since you're one of our brand new clients. So what are you doubling down that we provide?
Well, I loved your comment about reset. I think that's a great word to talk about this time period. So we have a core customer base, and that customer was with us for such a long time, but again, everything has kind of shifted and changed. So we're taking a look at that customer and want to be able to, through the data, say, are they coming back to us as frequently? Where else are they going? What are they buying? When are they shopping? All of those pieces. But then also pull in a new customer. So, the ability to identify who we're able to attract and not attract is incredibly important to us, because we do need to pull in not just more customers, but a younger customer base for us too. That's a huge challenge for us as we're going forward, to kind of rethink who that customer is that's coming into us day in and day out. A lot of people don't realize that we're not just a Christmas store. We're not. We're a year-round retailer. We specialize in the seasons, but we have home goods. We're a value-based, very much a treasure hunt. The store experience is a big part of it, so customers come to us almost as a form of entertainment. But communicating that message out is not easy. So the effectiveness of what we're doing and the ability to target customers through data and understand who those best prospects and targets are is huge for us as we go into next year. And then, I listen to these guys talking about their customers, and, we're jealous from our perspective. Our customer doesn't give us their name. They don't tell us who they are when they walk in the door necessarily. So again, the CDI element of this is huge for us, because the more we can match a customer and understand who that customer is, the more data we have to mine to understand where we are going forward. So those are huge pieces as we go into 2022.
Wonderful. Well, at that point, I'm going to close this session. And really wonderful to take time to speak with our customers. And I really appreciate your enthusiasm for technology with Zeta going forward. So thank you.
Thank you.